Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our Let's Talk Arsenal series. Our weekly show, usually on a Tuesday and a Friday at 5 p.m. And don't worry, they still will be there on Tuesday and Friday. But this is an impromptu debate show today, where I'm going to be joined by a fantastic guest to talk about a topic of interest for many people, and one which I'm sure is going to kind of bore some really good discussion. So let's crack on with it. Hello, Sophie. How you doing?
I'm very well, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good. I'm joined, listeners, of course, as you can see, by Sophie from the Highbury squads. We're just saying, good weekend besides the football. That was all fine. So sets you up for a decent week, I suppose.
Yeah, I watched a couple of good movies, a couple of good docs. Tried to move on from the Burnley game, but it just follows you everywhere you go. Can't get rid of the stench.
Us content creators, I mean, yeah, it's almost like we talk about it every day or something. Yeah, it's absolutely crazy at the moment. Thank you, Roy, in the chat for signing up as a new member. Really appreciate your support, mate. I'm sure a lot of you as well in the chat have followed Sophie over from the Highbury squad. If you haven't watched Sophie's show, make sure you go and check out the Highbury squad. The link is in the description, so make sure you get and check them out. You got Kev and Amanda, of course, and plenty of fantastic guests on every single week, or every single day, pretty much now. You're doing content, Sophie.
Yes, yeah, we've been doing content every day since the first lockdown last year. So this is our volume 2 lockdown series, and
a whole year.
Yeah. It's been, it's not easy. I know there are a lot of fans out there that do know how hard it is for, content folks to be putting it together every single day, especially when really, you're not making a ton of money out of it, or any money out of it, actually. So you're driven by this passion and this desire to kind of do what you do. And so we appreciate everyone who appreciates us and our show. It means a lot.
Exactly. So, listeners, first thing you're going to do when you finish listening is, of course, giving this show a like and a subscription, but make sure you click the link in the description to go check out the Highbury squad. Anyway, we're here to have a discussion because me and Sophie sometimes have, in the kindest way possible, friendly clashes on social media, which, I mean, I don't know if you've been onto Twitter ever, anyone listening before. It's nearly impossible not to do that, especially as Arsenal fans. But what we do try to prove on the old YouTube is that you can have a discussion amicably and level-headedly and still remain friends by the end. But I will tell you, Sophie, if you do disagree with me more than once, I may have to boot you out of the show. That's just how things go.
It is your show, so.
I'm just joking. Anyway, we're here to talk about kind of a topic which bore around, obviously, where we sit currently in the table. I joined you and Amanda on a show previously, and we had a bit of talk about Arteta and where we are as well, and that was I think it was early February when we did that. And we picked up some points, dropped some points since then too. So I'm interested just to kind of get overarching thoughts to kick things off about how you're feeling about Arsenal right now.
Well, my estimation of the team last season was that we were a cup team and not quite a Premier League team yet. And I think that still holds weight. Even though we've been knocked out of the FA Cup, which is a little bit unfortunate. Some would argue that perhaps the FA Cup was sacrificed to keep at it in the Premier League and perhaps the Europa League. I would hope that wasn't and isn't the case, especially in a competition, where we could maybe still had a route to Europe. At the beginning of the season, my desire was, let's be more competitive in the Premier League. Let's be better and go for the Europa League. I was, to sound hypocritical now, willing to say, okay, maybe the FA Cup isn't the priority. But then once our league form really lapsed and once we regressed and the only route back to Europe was through these 2 cup competitions, I felt, as much as I didn't want to put all of our eggs in that basket, that it was important for us that we remain competitive. And we didn't do that. So we've moved now along. We're in the final act of this season. Our league position hasn't improved. We've lost 11 games. You can't blame all of that on VAR and bad ref decisions. At some point, you have to look in the mirror and be accountable, because the league table, it's a cliche, but it doesn't lie. You are who you are after a period of multiple games. And for some reason, this team is unable yet to string consistency together, be more competitive, and stay mentally engaged in a match throughout its entire period. And so I do think that, yes, there are still players there that shouldn't be playing for the club. But at the same time, Arteta has been able to infuse some of his own players into this team. And you could argue that maybe he showed a bit too much blind faith to some of the Wengerites and some of the cliquey and toxic players at the beginning of this season. And if he hadn't have done that, where would we be now? If he was a little braver in some of his decision making, instead of maybe not relying on players that he had played with or players that he thought were going to be able to get us out of this mess and up the table. Can't lose to Villa twice in a season. You can't lose to Wolves twice in a season. You can't draw against Burnley and lose to Burnley in a season if you're talking about making progress. And for me, Tom, I just don't see where our progress in the league has been made other than being harder to break down at the back and leaking less goals.
Yeah. I understand, like, in the sense that it is very frustrating, and I'm frustrated as hell to be sitting as an Arsenal fan, and I know I haven't seen maybe anywhere near as much Arsenal as a lot of people have throughout their lives, and I grew up basically during the Invincibles period, which was obviously very nice to grow up during that period, and then a lot of my life has been Arsenal gradually getting further and further away from that point. And I think that now, with an older head on my shoulders than I had previously to kind of look at things, I remember being staunchly kind of Wenger in immediately, and then things changing as I got older to realise the bigger context and how change is necessary to change things. But also I think that I now look at the table in a very different way, in the context that there is a hell of a lot more teams now competing and spending the money and pushing for that top 4 place, to the point where I don't look at necessarily Arsenal as a club that has a right to say we should be in the top 4 every season, because to do that, I feel that you need, in the world of football that it is, to invest as smartly and as frequently as the other teams at the top of the table. To give kind of that context around that point, is that I look at the Premier League and I go, you've got 3 teams in the Prem that are out on their own, which are Chelsea, United and City, teams which can plough money in at a ridiculously high rate every single season. And they have the ultimate goal of winning the title. And if they don't do that, that is not good enough, and usually they move on their manager. You've then got kind of the next bracket of clubs, which I include ourselves in, which are ourselves, Liverpool, Everton. You've got to look at Leicester building up into that situation, annoyingly Spurs as well in that group too. And they're teams that don't have the capacity to pump money in every summer. And so what they've got to rely on is effectively spending through either self-sustainability, small injections from their ownership, and smart recruitment through player sales and purchases. Arsenal, and I saw you highlighted the piece I wrote today about how much we'd spent based upon the financial report, which is £561 million between 2015 and 2019, those summers, which is a stupid amount of money. And it's an amount of money which is comparative with a lot of teams that are in the top 4 and that are at the top of the table. The difference is that, as a lot of people were alluding to in your chat box that I saw, is that we've spent it pretty poorly over those seasons by bringing in players like Skodran Mustafi, overspending on players like Nicolas Pepe, spending it in positions where we probably should have directed that money elsewhere, as into the centre-back area, the centre midfield area. That's where I thought we should have really been pumping that money into. Now Arteta has taken over. He has obviously been at the club for a year now, and I'm finally seeing change in the way that we are recruiting. I see us buying a Gabriel at centre-back, a really good centre-back. I see us buying Pablo Mari for the price that we did, a very savvy piece of business, also been good. And I see Thomas Partey come in. And I look at that and I go, okay, that's different. That's a bit of change. We're seeing smart recruitment being made. These are players.
How different is that to Tierney for 25 million and Martinelli for 8 million?
Well, that's just the season prior as well. That's
the season prior under a different team, right?
Yeah, and
I didn't mean to. I did mean to interrupt. Actually, I'm not going to say I didn't mean to interrupt, because I did mean to interrupt. But I just see those as excuses. Have we bought Thomas Partey? Fantastic. Gabriel, great. Even though he's regressed a little, but I put that down to him perhaps having suffered from COVID, and it's not easy to recover from that, right? Pablo Mari, yes, a goodbye. But we've done this a couple of times, season on season. The difference is that what has he done with the different players that he's brought in? Our league position is no better off. And you mentioned some of those teams like a Leicester City, a West Ham and Everton. On paper, do Everton have a better team than us? Do West Ham have a better team than us? Do Leicester City have a better team than us? No, what they have is they've had better coaching this season. They clearly have better management this season. I mean, West Ham are how many points ahead of us? 11, maybe more. West Ham United. Now, I'm not saying they haven't done this season after season, but it's kind of incredible, isn't it? When you look at even Aston Villa being 1 point from relegation, look what they've done in the summer. And Dean Smith somehow has galvanized this squad to perform better in the Premier League, and they're in a better position. They've improved. They've evolved. West Ham have evolved. When David Moyes came in, I'm sorry, but he inherited an absolute mess. People were talking about wanting to throw the owners. I mean, they wanted to throw them under the bus. I mean, it was absolute mayhem at West Ham. I would say even worse a situation than Arteta inherited, because at least Arsenal have this fabric of a somewhat culture and foundation that, even though was poisoned for a number of years, he was able to maneuver and operate under it because he was given the power to do so. David Moyes still had to work within the confines of West Ham a little bit more. So Brendan Rodgers, Arsenal fans turned their noses up at him, Tom, for years. But he's improved Leicester. So with the same token of we found these gems, we've done that before, but what is he doing with the team? We haven't improved. We've lost 11 games in the Premier League. And we're losing games to teams we shouldn't be, but that's our level now. And I think that's the thing that Arsenal fans find it hard to get their heads around. You keep thinking we're rivals of Liverpool and City and Chelsea and Man United, but we're not anymore. Our rivals are West Ham, Leicester, Wolves, Southampton.
Well, Southampton and Wolves, not this season specifically, no, not at all. But I think there's a fact of the matter is that there's a lot of clubs that want to be where Chelsea or where we once were, and they're now doing the right things to put themselves in that position. I mean, you use the word excuse to say what I'd put out there as reasons as where we are. By definition, yes, it is an excuse. An excuse is a justification of a fault. That's what it is. And I don't necessarily. The fault is obviously where our league position is. And so the excuses behind that are just the reasons as to why we are there. And I believe that the reasons as to why we are 10th is not poor management or poor coaching, because I have seen improvement in this team. And the improvement I've seen in this team would make me go, well, it can't be poor coaching. And you look at West Ham, and I actually look at that team and I go, and you say, is it better than us? And on paper, you'll say, no, my God, West Ham United, they can't be better than Arsenal. But actually, their midfield, I mean, with Partey being available for us for 13 games, and a few of those he was only available for half of the match, they've had Declan Rice and Thomas Souček. That's miles ahead of our midfield, that pairing. I'd swap Thomas Partey and Granit Xhaka for Souček and Rice in a second. And I love Thomas Partey. But overall, as a pair, they're better, and they give West Ham more. I look at the recruitment that they've made from within the UK, which is something that Arsenal haven't done over seasons, bringing in Antonio from Forest, Bowen from Hull City, Benrahma from Brentford. It's something that Arsenal haven't done in a long time, is invest from within the UK. We're starting to maybe see some change in how we recruit. But I genuinely don't think that these clubs are miles off. I don't see them being above us as an insult or as a thing that we should look at. I think that Arsenal need that as a reality check to look at those teams and say, wow, the business that they've done is really improving them. Leicester have done fantastically well in the market after they lost the likes of N'Golo Kante, Riyad Mahrez, etc. when they won the title. They built on that by spending really well on other good players that have then performed. And I don't look at players. I don't look at the players like Aubameyang and Lacazette who haven't performed this season. I mean, can you explain to me why you think that Arteta's coaching has made players like Lacazette or Aubameyang not be able to finish chances that they would usually finish? I mean, why? How does Arteta's coaching affect that, for instance?
Well, you have to ask what's been done in training, right? You have to ask why maybe they've lost a little bit of confidence. Also, it's cyclical. Lacazette really wasn't the main goal scorer. I'm more concerned about Aubameyang's inability to perform this season. A lot of people would say, well, his mum was sick. Well, yes, she was, but he wasn't great since maybe after that Fulham game. You know, he hadn't been performing. And you don't know what goes on behind closed doors. You don't know what players are going through. You don't want to criticize them too much. But he also maybe at times wasn't being fed the ball quick enough, fast enough. Maybe players weren't finding him on that run. And you saw that change a little when ESR came into the team. You saw that change when Lacazette was playing with Saka and ESR. We played with a lot more speed, especially when Partey was playing. You know, even Xhaka was making balls, passing the ball frontwards and not sideways and backwards. So some of him not being able to score has had a lot to do with how we've played. You know, we have this slow build up and it's consistent. We love playing the ball out of the back. And sometimes, you know, that's excruciatingly painful, but it's the way the manager wants to play. And so you see the way we played against Leicester came out really quick, really wanted to kind of, humble them early. We did that. And even in the earlier on in the season where Willian played like a number 10, was interchanging in the 10 role with Saka against Sheffield United, played really well then. You know, the games where we've played well, we've played faster football, we've been more creative, we've been able to get our foot on the ball more, make the most of possession. Now we have a lot of possession. We don't really do too much with it. There's a lack of confidence. And I'm not saying it's all Arteta's fault, but he can't get the praise when we win, and then you can't criticize him the same way. This is the thing that I find the hardest with some Arsenal fans is, you know, I lauded him against maybe being able to come back against Olympiacos, the Leicester game. You know, playing that way with this heart, this passion and this speed against Leicester as well. And the fact that we dominated them completely. I mean, why can't we play like that more often? And I'm not saying that we should because each opponent is different, but he's got to be culpable for some of this. You know, it's not just the players all the time. He's got rid of a lot of the clique that weren't working for him. Sokratis, Mustafi, Kolasinac, you know, Guendouzi, Torreira, Ozil. And he's brought in some of his own players. And I just don't see for me, coaching comes with consistency. And that's where I question him, Tom. Don't necessarily question him for Pepe missing that chance against Burnley. We win 2-1. It's a different conversation. But I do question why we can't be consistent, why we can't string multiple games together and win. And I do think that comes to do with coaching and having players mentally engaged for an entire season, being able to do that and carry that off.
I think that I take on board everything that you said there, and I think that there is certainly saying that he is perfect and everything that's gone wrong is nothing that is his fault would be ridiculous. That would be saying that'd be perfectionist, and it wouldn't be saying that he isn't culpable for some of the mistakes. I don't agree with some of the team selections he's made. I don't agree with him sticking along with Hector Bellerin for as long as he did when he could have played Cedric instead of him when he had Kieran Tierney available to him. I don't agree with some of the substitutions that he's made with bringing Willian on instead of maybe Martinelli in some moments. I don't agree with some of those things. But what I look at is the season as a whole, and I go, since Boxing Day, we've lost 3 league games. Those 3 league games, one was against Man City, and the other 2 were the back-to-back games against Wolves. This is in the league, by the way, the Wolves and the Aston Villa game. The Wolves game still gives me nightmares. I still wake up in the morning in sweats thinking about that Wolves game, because we played some of the best football I've seen us play under Arteta in the first 40 minutes. For it to get thrown away of a silly mistake or a poor officiating decision, whichever on the side of the line you fall on with that moment. And then, of course, the red cards and the red cards has also been an issue as well. We've had way too many red cards. And if that's down to coaching, whether that's down to the same old characters, but then Gabriel was one of those players that got sent off too. So maybe that's something as well that you can point to. But after Boxing Day, as I say, we've lost 3 league games. And the rest of those performances then, we've been one of the better formed teams in the league. We've been within the top 5 teams in terms of
the league starts in August, Tom.
Of course.
It doesn't start in December.
I understand
that's our problem. We're a half a season or a quarterly team. We can't be a team for the season.
No, and I think that we will be better prepared for a full season as we continue on with what Arteta is trying to shape. You look at that period before Boxing Day, that was the first time we had a natural number 10 playing in that game against Chelsea, which was Emile Smith Rowe. which obviously he was injured at the start of the campaign. He was getting minutes when he gradually was getting fitter in the under-23s and then in the Europa League. And then we brought him in. He came off the bench, I think it was against Everton, and then we threw him in against Chelsea when he could have chosen someone like Joe Willock, which he had previously done against the likes of Leeds, etc. But he didn't. He went with Smith Rowe. We didn't have a natural number 10 because we didn't sign one. And that, you could say, comes down to the recruitment side of things. But I think at the end of the window, we had a choice between Aouar and Partey, and we decided to go for Partey. And I genuinely believe if Partey had been fit for the whole of the season, we wouldn't be sitting where we are, and we would have competed better in a lot of the games that we would have competed in, because we ultimately put ourselves in a position where our midfield, our weakest part of our team, wasn't upgraded where other teams all around us were. So that first part of the season, we didn't have our number 1 signing. We didn't have a natural number 10. Our main strikers in Lacazette and Aubameyang couldn't hit a barn door of a banjo. I thought so many things, and I know that they'll get called excuses, but I look at all those things that came together, and it was a really, really poor time for Arteta. And he got Arsenal to a point where it was as low, if not lower, than when Unai Emery got sacked previously. And I feel like dragging us out of that situation, getting some tactical decisions right by playing Smith Rowe, getting in Erdegaard in January, bringing in a backup keeper. He has actioned those mistakes that were made and the issues that we had. And now we are seeing the benefits from that. And the games that we've lost since then, the Wolves game, the Villa game was a mistake from Cedric. And then the Burnley game where we dropped points again, we should have won that game. And
why do we make so many mistakes? You know, I hear, well, I mean, everyone keeps talking about we've made so many mistakes. If we limited our mistakes, we probably would be in the top 6, right? Or if our decisions had gone our way. I just think these are excuses, okay?
Yeah.
But why do we make a lot of mistakes? See, to me, when I see, and I'm not going to compare a novice manager with Pep Guardiola, but for someone who was tutored under Pep Guardiola, and everyone raves about the fact that he was tutored under Pep Guardiola, and he saw his perfectionism, okay? When you limit your mistakes, you win games. It's the difference. Goals and limiting mistakes are the difference between winning and losing games. Why do we keep making the same mistakes? You know, because mentally, Tom, our team hasn't evolved. Our culture as a club hasn't evolved. Our DNA, what we used to know, is dead, right? There's a new Arsenal being built. It's Arsenal 2.0. This is a new chapter. Everything we've known before us is gone. We haven't won the league in 17 years. We've won the FA Cup 4 times in 6.5 years. We had the opportunity to win a European trophy. We didn't do that. We have another opportunity to do that this year. You could argue that in some ways, Unai Emery, as much as fans, you know, hated him towards the end, helped evolve the culture of our club. He gave younger players a chance. He got us back to a European final. He gave us confidence by going on a 22 unbeaten game run, despite how some people say, oh, we got lucky. Well, I don't hear you saying that when it comes to people calling us out with the Invincibles, that we drew a lot of games. It works then, but it doesn't work when Unai Emery goes on a 22 unbeaten game run. Okay. And I saw Danny had written that no team has gone on a 4+ unbeaten game run this season. Well, this season is a bit of an anomaly, but we still aren't improved in the league, right? So I think that it's all well and good saying those things, but the league position is still what it is, right? I mean, we have no striker in double digits this season. That's unacceptable. How is that?
Well, I was going to say to you, how would you explain that to be Arteta's fault? That they're, because I put it down to them too, because I think Aubameyang and Lacazette are experienced enough strikers and are prolific enough strikers that they shouldn't be missing the chances that have been created for them this season.
Is there a confidence issue? Is something happening behind the scenes that we don't know about? I don't know. Are they just going on a bad run and they've been on a bad run together? You know, again, Lacazette wasn't the prolific goal scorer. And Aubameyang has been. He's been our saviour. I mean, without his goals and Leno's saves in 18, 19, 19, 20, you could argue that we would have been in a lot of trouble. I think what Lacazette scored 58 odd goals in 100 and something plus appearances. I'm not saying it's his fault, and don't twist me saying that Arteta is culpable for some of our performances and results. And maybe at times when those players can't score, why not bring on a young gun like a Martinelli who plays fearless football? Why not give him a chance? So he doesn't make the adjustments sometimes at the right spot, or he'll make them too late for that player to have an impact on the game. That's where I think he's got the power to maybe do something different. I'm not saying he's responsible for them missing chances from the get-go.
Yeah, of course. When it comes down to like looking at Arteta, one of the big things you've mentioned there gets brought up is his in-game management and some of the decisions that he's made. But I don't think the reason that we sit in 10th can be placed on substitutions during games. I think that when you look at the quality that we do have on the pitch,
I didn't say that's the reason. I didn't say that. I'm going to call you out. Okay, but it has an effect on giving your team the ability to maybe get a point or get a win in a game, right?
And we've closed that gap with big sides considerably under Arteta, have we not, when it comes down to those big games against City, against Liverpool. We've competed in these games where under Wenger, under Emery, we were blown away at times against those teams. We seem to
struggle. We seem to struggle when we go, when we don't like to chase a game, do we? You know, and especially when we've gone 1-0 down if you look at that stat, that's pretty alarming in terms of how we've been able to come back from going 1-0 down, you know, this season. And yeah, under Unai Emery, we conceded more, but we scored a ton more too. You know, so it's okay for people to be happy that, oh, we only lost 1-0 to City. If it was Emery, we would have lost 4-0. What difference does it make? We lost.
I think it does matter, though. I think it does matter wholly, because...
So you would rather not play and be creative and try to score rather than do nothing, lose 1-0? Because that's what we pretty much did.
I think against Manchester City, you're 100% right. We didn't turn up to that game, and we ultimately ran out as 1-goal losers in a match that they didn't need to come out of second gear at all. City, they did for their goal, and that was about it. But I think in plenty of other matches this season, we have done what we've not been able to do in other teams. I mean, it's the first, when we beat Leicester, that's the first time we've beaten a side in the top 3 since 2015 away from home. When we beat Manchester United, that's the first time since 2006 that we've gone to Old Trafford in the league and won. I think we are improving. I think that it is much easier for a manager to turn the results against some of the smaller sides. I think that's been our issue this season, is we've dropped too many points in games that we shouldn't be dropping points in. But actually, when you look at the tougher challenge, which always has been for Arsenal, is picking up points and competing in the matches against our rivals, that is something that is gradually improving. And I'm not saying that I would rather lose 1-0 in a game where we barely try or that we don't look like scoring than trying in a game and losing 4-0. I think it's a gradual evolution. I don't think within a flick of a switch do you suddenly start seeing a difference like that, especially at a club like Arsenal, which has been perpetually given poor player after poor player, season upon season, through poor recruitment. I think Arteta's got a huge job to turn it around.
I agree with part of what you're saying. Also, when you're talking about why aren't our strikers taking chances, you know why? Because they're not getting as many in a game. And we have...
The early game, for instance, we created loads, didn't we?
That's been one of few, right? Where we've created lots of chances, and when Saka scores that goal, it's 2-0. It could be a moot point, game over. Yeah. But he didn't finish it. So you also have to take into consideration that because our offensive play, our creativity has slowed down under Arteta greatly. Okay. Look at the goal ratio between, and I'm not comparing the two managers, and I'm not saying I want Emery back or I didn't want Emery sacked. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just looking at the data and the analytics. Emery's Arsenal scored a lot more goals than Arteta's. And sometimes Aubameyang needs 2 or 3 chances in a game to get one. Lacazette might need 2 or 3. Not everybody is like Sergio Aguero. Not everybody's like Mo Salah. Not everybody is like, dare I say, a Harry Kane or a Son, where they just need a chance. Yeah. We actually have strikers in a team that needs several chances. And when you're not creating as many, that makes it tricky. So that's where I circle back to, well, why aren't we creating more? How are we being set up as a team? Is Arteta, so focused on, we were so poor at the back, and he's created that improvement defensively, but at the sacrifice of creating chances and putting our forward line in a position to be able to score more goals. So I think that comes into it as well, Tom, a little bit in terms of the chances they actually get in a game.
But I disagree in the sense that I believe that this second part after Boxing Day, we have done those things. We have created plenty more chances because Arteta has had the personnel. He's had that natural number 10 in Smith Rowe. He's brought another one in Erdegaard. And I feel like if he's given the backing and he's able to sign further creative talent in the summer, we will gradually see that. But when you have a side that has got Lacazette and has got Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, but has got no number 10, to the point where you're either playing Willian, who's played his entire career out on the wing and has come to Arsenal and dropped off a cliff in terms of talent, or playing Joe Willock, who is an unproven, who I believe is not good enough to be at Arsenal Football Club, playing at 10. I think you really are going to struggle to create chances for those wide players. I think that's... Do you
but
not
the
think
league, again, the league starts,
creativity?
The league starts in August. I completely respect what you're saying about our form since December. I totally respect that.
That form's been because of what Arteta's done, though. That's what I'm saying.
The league starts in August. Okay.
But we didn't have the personnel from that point.
But you could argue also that he wasn't prepared for the season, right? And this whole learning on the job and everything, it's just like not good enough in my estimation for Arsenal Football Club. And people keep referring to what we've done December onwards. And let's see what we do between now and the end of the season. But the proof is in the pudding still, Tom, that we can't win a game or close a game. And our league position has not changed. So with all that you're saying, I get it. It's like having 80% possession in a game and then losing it or getting a draw. What's the point? I'd rather have 20% possession in a game right now and win it. So it's all well and good kind of looking at what he's done since December, and that's a good thing. But the fact that we can't do it consistently still, I think speaks volumes for us in the league. And right now, we're still a cup team. We're not a Premier League team. We're just not.
I don't see, though, because the alternative to this, and this is where I suppose we turn the argument in the other direction and go, okay, what's the alternative? Because if Arteta's not getting enough from this team, then some people would suggest that he should be replaced. I don't personally see another coach coming in and doing a greatly better job than Mikel Arteta is currently doing. Because I don't think that people would turn around and say, well, Ancelotti would do a much better job because he's more experienced. But what Ancelotti has done at Everton is in the summer, he was backed, unlike Arteta. He was given 3 prime players going into the top part of their career in Rodriguez and Doucouré and in Alan in positions where they needed that reinforcement to build upon what was already a decent squad with Dean and Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison and Sigurdsson and Yerry Mina and Keane, etc. He was given those prime talents, whereas Arteta was given a squad that has been dysfunctional for a long, long time and was given 2 key players to add to the starting lineup in Partey and in Gabriel. And
he chose Willian.
I'm getting there. And he was given Willian because effectively, if you look at how much money was available to us, if we had money to spend more than what we did spend, we would have got more than either Willian or we would have got Aouar and Partey at the end of the window. We didn't because we didn't have the money to be able to do it. And so Arteta's told you must be told the amount of money is going to be given at the start of the window, because otherwise why plan for a transfer window? He brings in Thomas Partey and he brings in Gabriel for a combined about 70 million quid, of which a lot of that had to be financed very recently by the owner. We can't bring in anything else. He's looked at Nicolas Pepe and gone, I don't think he's good enough to be the sole option on the right-hand side. Thankfully, he's had the genius moment to move Saka onto the right-hand side, and we've seen him flourish there too. But Willian was brought in as a player that was in the top 10 chance creators for Chelsea last season, that was 32, still cold, still good, still able to do things. And no one can tell me, and I won't have it from anyone, that anyone can say that they knew Willian was going to be this bad. No one could tell me that Willian was going to be as bad in comparison to last season.
Every transfer is a risk.
Of course it is. But I think that when you look at the fact that Arsenal have barely ever signed players in the Premier League, and this was someone that was coming in at the end of his contract that had done well last season at Chelsea to be in, as I say, the top 10 chance creators in the Premier League, added to the fact that we had Partey and Gabriel, to a side that has been perpetually poorly recruited into, that Arteta was given it was always going to be a real struggle this season based upon what was available to him. And then when you factor in the factor that Thomas Partey isn't available to you, that you've then got a midfield that isn't upgraded on, that isn't improved, you are going to struggle when everyone else around you then improves their squads. So that's why I don't see another manager doing any better than he's done this season.
Do you think Thomas Tuchel's done better at Chelsea since he's taken over from Lampard?
I think Thomas Tuchel has improved Chelsea since he's been there. Yes, 100%. But I look at
You
what's
could argue
available to them.
that they have better players than us, right?
Exactly.
Undoubtedly, they have better players than us. However, right, there are managers in the league. Look, I mean, even Sean Dyche has improved Burnley since they were crap earlier this season. Somehow galvanised them. Scott Parker, how has he got Fulham playing better? And all these kind of tenacious points that they've been able to get over the last few weeks now, where they have Brighton and Newcastle looking over their shoulder.
Scott Parker or Sean Dyche than Arteta?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just giving you examples of teams that have improved somewhat.
We've
and
improved.
I just think we have our league position hasn't improved. We've improved
Burnley and Fulham.
statistically.
If you pick up points in that part of the table, it's going to propel you way further up than if you pick up points in the top half of the table.
We've still lost games.
3 games since Christmas.
3 games. That's not good enough in terms of where we want to be and where we want to climb up the table. And I'm giving you examples. And yes, I'm sure I'm going to get hammered for bringing up Sean Dyche and Scott Parker. But the question was about the answer for me is about giving you examples of teams just improving because their manager is doing something, right? Are you telling me that Nagelsmann couldn't come in and make our team better? He's got RB Leipzig at the top of Bundesliga. He could end up being like one of those generational. He could end up being one of those generational managers that we miss out on the same way we did Pep Guardiola, Antonio Conte, and Jurgen Klopp, because we let managers like that pass us by. And then you are seeing improvements. You are seeing improvements at Leicester under Rodgers, at West Ham under David Moyes, at Aston Villa under Dean Smith. I mean, these are just facts. They're there. And whether you think they're good examples or not, they're examples I can give you of teams that have somewhat improved. And yes, I hear you. December onwards, we've improved slightly. But for Arsenal Football Club, this mediocrity and this narrative of mediocrity is unacceptable. And when I see us in the same league position and potentially this week we could fall back further, the improvement is climbing the table and being more competitive in the Premier League and translating some of this into results, which the team is failing to do.
I think that what you raise about the examples, Scott Parker and Sean Dyche, I think Sean Dyche has done an amazing job at a Burnley team that barely get to invest every single summer, and he keeps them up when teams come up from the Championship that spend loads of money and go straight back down. I think he's done a great job. I think it suits him, that job, really well. Scott Parker has started to get much better results since, ironically, Christmas to then move them further up. But I think that they're really good examples because of where they are in the table. And if you start picking up points at the bottom of the table, you can quite easily move up. But when you're in the top half of the table and you're looking at those sides that are picking up points, I mean, if you look over the last 4 or 5 seasons, the gap between 10th place and 4th has dropped significantly. 4 years ago, it was 31 points. 3 years ago, again, I think it dropped slightly. It might have still been 31 points. But 2 years ago, it was like 16 points. Last year, it was 12 points. The gap between 10th and 4th is closing dramatically. And that means that you can keep winning games in the top half, but it's no guarantee that your league position is going to go up. And the fact is that we're now 9 points off top 4 right now, I think. Or we might be slightly more after the West Ham result. I can check it. So Chelsea are on 50 points. We're 12 points off top 4 with a game in hand over Chelsea. So it could close to 9. I don't know who the game in hand is against, but it could effectively be 9. It's 12 right now. And we finished 12 points off top 4, I believe, last season where we finished. And so we could effectively still progress based upon that. The league position might not be better than last year, but the proximity to top 4 could still be better than last year. The whole point of this, obviously, me getting you on here and talking about this, when we called it the league position debate, because I do think that the league position is something that is a stick to beat the club with that is out of context when it comes to how close we actually are to what we want to achieve and how difficult that challenge is with the teams that are around us with what we're able to do. And I think that we have seen an upturn in form since Christmas. Yes, our league position hasn't necessarily changed. I think that gap between us.
What does that have to do with not being able to beat teams like Villa or Wolves or Burnley?
Well, you look at Burnley, I believe in that game we were out far the better team, and Arteta's tactics created huge chances in that match that should have been taken, and we should have been. Yeah, but why is that Arteta can't jump onto the pitch and tell Pepe to connect with the ball?
I mean, it's a collective, it's a team, right? The manager is responsible, as are the players.
Of course. But what can Arteta do but give the team the instructions to go out there and create all these chances, and they miss those chances?
How many games have been played so far this season, Tom? All in.
As we've talked about, the two halves of the season that we're talking about, I believe there are reasons behind why we were so weak at the beginning. You've came back to me and said that...
I've heard them, and I agree with some of that. But my point is, and I'm a stickler for it, the league position doesn't lie. I mean,
I think there is greater context than the league position. I do. I just think it's
because we like to use the rearview mirror at Arsenal. We always like to blame the past. We always like to blame everything that's come before us. And there's been issues and problems. You know, it's not just Unai Emery and Mikel Arteta. They both inherited institutionalized cultural issues at a club that has done bad business for years and years and years. And it takes a while to evolve out of that and evolve through it. And my point is, and my comparison is, when I see other clubs who are lesser of our history, lesser of even our football culture, doing better than us with less than us, at some point, it's okay to question if the manager is having
what do you mean less than us
on this team.
Can I just ask you, though, what do you mean by less than? Because I completely disagree with the history point. For me, history is great in the sense that it puts you in that stature. But history in terms of football means jack. Like, it doesn't mean anything in regards to league position, which is what we want. No one's going to give you a pity prize for what your history is.
Why wasn't Emery defended the same way as Arteta? Why were people so quick to want Emery out? Why didn't they give him the same care and consideration?
Because he continued the mistakes that Arsene Wenger made.
How Arteta didn't make mistakes early this season by continuing to play Bellerin, by continuing to play Xhaka, who's prone to mistakes, by continuing to play Willian.
Who did you play instead of Xhaka?
You could play Elneny, makes less mistakes. He's a neat player who passes sideways. He passes the ball sideways and backwards the same way as Xhaka. Go on.
Xhaka's a progressive midfielder still. Like, I get that he passes sideways and he passes.
He's not really. Only when he plays with Party, we've seen that a little bit. And I've defended Xhaka completely. But the point is that you didn't answer the question why Emery was making mistakes. When he was on a 22 unbeaten game run, people were fine with that. And then the mistakes happened and everyone lost faith after the Europa League loss, which was humiliating. The players didn't show up in that game. That wasn't all Emery's fault. My question is, why, when his league position was better, his league form was better, why haven't fans afforded Emery the same patience they're giving Arteta? And I can help answer that question to make it even easier for you, because one won their final and the other didn't. Winning the FA Cup got Arteta a lot of love coupons from Arsenal fans. And that is the only difference between the two, because league form-wise, there's no comparison. Would you agree with that?
So let me answer the question. Before I answer the question, just quickly, in the chat box, this is obviously a discussion between me and Sophie that we're talking about, and we're not agreeing on things. And you might not agree with my point of view, and you might not agree with Sophie's point of view, but I will not have anyone in this chat box insulting either of us, because you need to be open to the fact that this is a debate and that we've got different points of view. So keep your insults to yourselves. Thank you very much.
I didn't see it. It aimed at me.
No.
Sorry.
No, it was both of us. So we've taken equal flack tonight, it's fair to say. So why Emery, for me, isn't given the same amount of slack as Arteta? I get the whole trophy thing. I think the trophy thing buys, it buys a little bit more for Arteta, for sure, in the eyes of some fans. It doesn't for me. The reason for me is because I think that Emery continued the mistakes of Arsene Wenger in terms of what is really the big crux of Arsenal's problem, which I always come back to, which is, for me, recruitment. Is that in the first season that we had Emery here and looking at the positions that he wanted, he brought in Lucas Torreira. I say he. Okay, I'll be fair. We obviously have Raul Sanllehi at the club, and obviously he was involved and he influenced the players, but maybe it wasn't necessarily him. But it's his positions that he specifically wanted, and then the club went out and got those players. So Stefan Lichtsteiner comes in, Lucas Torreira comes in, Matteo Guendouzi comes in. None of those players, besides Lucas Torreira, what he brought in at the start, improved on what we already had, in my view. Lucas Torreira was an upgrade on that position. But then I look at what Emery did with Lucas Torreira, which was to move him into a completely the wrong role. And effectively, I feel he ruined what was a good prospect in Lucas Torreira. You fast forward to the following summer, and there's some good signs that come in. Kieran Tierney comes in, which is a really good signing. We needed a left back. We tracked him at the club for a long time, and we brought him in great. We bring in Gabriel Martinelli, which was thanks to Francis Cajigal's scouting, and he finds him. We get him in too.
Brilliant.
William Saliba comes in. Yeah, brilliant buy. William Saliba comes in, 30 million quid. The only way that we're going to get him is if we send him back on loan. We needed a centre-back, but it's not a player that's going to have an immediate impact on the team. It's not a centre-back you're going to sign and he's going to go straight in and improve your defence. And then the other player that we bring in is Nicolas Pepe. Now, people tell me that Emery wasn't backed because he wanted Wilfried Zaha, and instead he got Nicolas Pepe. I disagree with the point of view to say that he wasn't backed because of that. Because a coach, how I feel and why I look at Arteta is different, and why I give him more of the benefit of the doubt is because he chose to spend his big money on the two key positions that we've lacked for a decade, at centre back and at centre midfield. And that's why, for me, I give Arteta more credit and more time because he's doing the things differently. Yes, he's making coaching mistakes. Yes, we've not been good enough at the start of the season. But I am seeing changes and I am seeing improvements that I'd not seen under the previous two managers and at the end of Arsene Wenger's, not to say his whole tenure, but the end of Arsene Wenger's tenure and the whole of Unai Emery's tenure. I look at it and say, I don't think Unai Emery continued on from where Wenger left us and improved us. I think that he got to a European final, which is great. I think we had a decent squad with Ozil still there and Ramsey playing, and these players in the midfield was better than what Arteta's had.
Ramsey, though, didn't he? Didn't he? He lost Ramsey.
Lost Ramsey towards the end of the Europa League run. He lost him against, I think it was Napoli that we lost him in that game. And then we obviously played Valencia in the semi-final.
And a lot of people say losing Rambo was a big reason why we regressed at that time.
And I would say that this season, Partey being injured is why we've lost a lot of the games.
Like, it's okay to have differing opinions about certain managers, and me thinking of Arteta a little bit differently to you. I think the mistake people make is that when you criticize Arteta, you're Arteta out. That's not what I've said, and that's not. And some people may think that I have that agenda, but I absolutely do not. What I do think is okay is for you to criticize the manager and question why there hasn't been any improvement in the league. Because even Unai came in and people kind of, vilified him for he tried. I work with a coach here when I'm covering LA Galaxy, whose English wasn't great, but he tried so hard to speak English, and learn English. Jonathan Dos Santos, who's played here for a few seasons, only now starting to feel really comfortable doing his press in English. Marcelo Bielsa, everyone lauds him. He's on this Mount Rushmore of managers, coaches, and doesn't speak a lick of English to his players as a translator. But people want to kill Emery because he lost the dressing room because he couldn't communicate. These are excuses, Tom. This is what I've come to learn about our football club. Is at some point a football club has to stand up, has to be more ruthless, has to take accountability and responsibility for all of their actions. And maybe that's happening under Edu and Arteta now. We won't know until maybe November of this year. Give him another transfer window. Let's see what he truly does with a squad and a team that is completely built in his image. And I've always said on our show for a long time that a really great manager builds a team in his image. They take on his characteristics, his personality. Look at Liverpool and Klopp. Look at Pep at Barcelona, Bayern, and Manchester City. Antonio Conte did it at Juventus. He then did it at Chelsea. Look at Diego Simeone at Atletico Madrid. You become an image of your manager. And that's the part where I give Arteta the benefit of the doubt still, because I think it's half in his image and the rest is to be built in the summer. But if we're in the same league position come November, Tom, no one.
That's going to stick.
I just got a text message up here from my cousin, Todd Gardner. So I went, I found out
Good
Todd.
Save.
We're not going to know that, right? But I still expect to see some improvements. And all I'm saying is no excuses. They can't make excuses. City don't make them. Chelsea don't make them. Chelsea are ruthless. Say whatever you want about their revolving managerial door, but it yields trophies. It yields success. It's changed their culture and DNA, and we need to discover what that is for us.
So in response to that, what I would say is that, and especially with the coaches that you've brought up there, with the Guardiola and the Klopp, and Conte when he came in at Chelsea, is that I used this analogy the other day. Like, if you think of the Premier League as a treadmill, right, over these years, and the treadmill's running, and whatever coach we've got it at the time, now Arteta is the coach that's running on the treadmill, and giving him better players like Partey and Gabriel allows Arteta to run faster and keep up, and Arsenal to be better. But the problem is that the Premier League, which is the treadmill, is now a higher speed with all of the other teams that can compete with where we are at than it was 5 years ago, say, when Klopp came in. When Klopp came in, he could build his team, gradually get better and better, and he didn't have the same amount of competition around him than what Arteta has now. And I know that the obvious response is to say this is an excuse, and I don't believe it is an excuse. I believe it is a genuine reason as to why this challenge for Arteta is tougher, and that while we're still winning games and our form has improved, yet our league position is also remaining stagnant right now. It's because the situation around Arteta and the competition around him right now, despite us improving over the last 3 months or so, is because of that same competition that's exceptionally difficult to beat. The 3 games that we've lost being Wolves, Villa, and against Man City. Man City is it's not a game that I don't want to call it a write-off, but it's a game that you would probably turn around and say you expect to lose that game. Wolves and Aston Villa. Well, Aston Villa this season have been very good, and I feel that we obviously we were the architects of our own downfall with the mistake that we made at the start of the game, and we arguably should have had a penalty, and we could have even been up against a side with 10 men had they deemed that same red card that they gave in a different game later on in the season. I think it was against West Ham, or it might have actually been against Aston Villa, for thinking about it. And I look at those games and I go, if we had beaten Wolves at that time, we would have been 6th after that game. If we'd have managed to carry on that form and we didn't make that mistake, we could have been 6th in the table, and maybe things would be very different now. And I think to next season is that the treadmill is only going to get faster. And the thing for Arteta and whoever coach we have is that we need to back them. And as you said, this team needs to be made in his image. And that's only going to happen if we give him the players in the right positions. And not only give him the players, but these players can't just be a Mustafi that's exactly the same as we got, doesn't improve us, a Xhaka that doesn't necessarily improve us, even a Nicolas Pepe that doesn't necessarily improve us. The players that we give Arteta must be players that are better than what we have, and not only better, but considerably better, and that will get into other top 6 sides in the Premier League. And that's going to be tricky without the financial backing. And I had a really good discussion with Turkish the other day, and we basically come to the agreement that under the current ownership, we don't see us competing for the title again at this point. Whilst we're not getting the investment, whilst we're not getting the backing, we're not going to get to that stage. And I believe that we have a better chance, though, to compete for the top 4 and to get back to the stage of trying to progress and with better recruitment with Arteta in charge because of what I've seen. And he is only going to get better as a coach. So all the things that you have criticised, quite rightly at times, for the things that he's done wrong this season, I see those as things that he will fix and he will get better. But the things that are incredibly different are what make him what I feel is the right manager right now, because they are incredibly different for what we've already seen under Emery and under Arsene Wenger.
As I said, I think he deserves the summer transfer window. And I feel very strongly about the fact that he needs to build the team in his image. Like I said, the reason why the treadmill's sped up and other people have caught us is because we slowed down. The ownership is as much to blame for this as it's the poor executive team, poor management, player apathy, inconsistency on the pitch. It's all trickled down, right? And unfortunately, other clubs have caught up to us. More TV money now, more money in the game overall. Some teams are even better at, our commercial opportunities than we are. Yeah. I think as Arsenal Football Club, internationally as well, my goodness, I just don't think we do enough. So these are things that we can improve financially across the board. It's not going to be easy in a time of COVID, but it's clear we need a right back. We need, I would say, another centre back. We need a cover for Tierney if he's going to be an injury-prone player. We need a partner for Thomas Partey. That would be I think, the nucleus to everything we do as a football club, whether it's a Basuma or whether it's someone like him. I think he's going to be a tough get. I think we need a striker. I mean, people not laughed at me, Kev, but they were like, what? Lukaku? I would take Lukaku at our club every single day of the week. He's improved as a footballer playing for Inter Milan. He's strong. He's fast, scores goals, consistent, would scare teams, would bully teams. We're too nice. We're a bit weak sauce. So that part is another area that Arteta has to really improve on as well. I'm not saying let's develop shithousery, but we need to be a bit tougher. We need to just be in the game a little bit more than we are. So he's got a huge job on his hands still. But he's also been able to bring in players to improve that team. And that's the part where the rubber meets the road for me. So, like I said, come November, if we're in the same league position after he's been able to reinvest, that's going to be where I think you have to honestly say, okay, is he the right man for the job and call it quits? Yeah. But until then, if he keeps making mistakes, I'll criticize him. And if he does well, I have a humble pie baked on deck to eat with whipped cream and ice cream. And I'm more than happy to do it because, all I want is for the club to do well. And it's really tough being a Generation Xer and seeing so much success over the years, how we've regressed in the Premier League. I mean, it's really one of the saddest things to me as an Arsenal fan. I love winning the FA Cup, don't get me wrong. But to not compete in the Premier League, that's been a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, and the listeners who watch this show will vouch for this. And I have sat here and I have said that this isn't about blind faith from me. This is about me seeing what I've seen and coming to a different conclusion to other people. And that I will sit here in a year's time, and if we are still in the same place after having brought in more quality and have done the things that I've asked for in saying that we need to improve the team and bring in better players, and if we're still here, then my view will have changed. My opinion will have changed because I will be given the evidence to suggest that no, it's not working, and we've been given better players and we're still where we are, and we will need to change things. It's not about blind faith. It's not about having an agenda either way for anyone. It's about what we see on the pitch and ultimately the conclusions that we come to. And I think that ultimately what we can agree on, Sophie, is that we both want Arsenal to go in the right direction. We both want Arteta to succeed and to turn these things around and to improve on what we've got already, and that 100%. We sincerely hope that he does.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tom. And this is what I like, is about us being able to have a healthy debate and discussion, even though we disagree. And we both feel very passionately about what we see. And it's amazing, isn't it? Sometimes you're looking through the same lens, but you have a different story to tell. And that's what I love about football. Not saying that all the things I'm saying are factual. No, they're my opinion. Some of the facts are what they are, the data, the analytics. You can't change that. It is what it is. But as long as we can debate and discuss in a healthy fashion like this, I'm all for it. And I would love for him to do well. And if he wins the Europa League, I mean, that would be incredible. I mean, I lose my mind just thinking about it.
Yeah.
So
I'm trying not to.
And this is a massive game, this North London derby. This is a game-changing kind of match for him, for this team.
Huge.
To be able to, because if you look at our schedule after Tottenham, Tom, it's pretty healthy.
Liverpool.
I mean, we play a lot of the bottom half teams as well.
We do, yeah.
Right.
Which has been our kind of Achilles heel this season, as we mentioned earlier. And I think that
things that have to improve.
Exactly,
right?
And they do have to change. And you're 100% right. And I'm thinking now that obviously one of my key points I've been saying is that I feel that we've improved after Christmas, despite our league position not necessarily changing. I think, as I've pointed out, there are reasons for that. But when it comes to the end part of the season, we have one of the nicer run-ins of the teams that would be competing for that final position. If we can get past Spurs, West Ham, and Liverpool, with a good points tally from those games, then we go into those matches against the sides that we should be with a point to prove. And Arteta's got a point to prove, and so do the players. And that will be a barometer for the end of the season for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think he's beaten Mourinho as a player, and he certainly hasn't beaten him as a manager. So every stat changes somewhere, and let's hope it's this weekend, because they've definitely found some form, haven't they? And we need to make sure we don't lose that game.
Before you go, I'd love to get your predictions for the next two matches, which is, of course, Olympiacos and the North London derby. So what are you feeling? What are your score predictions? What are you thinking?
I think we'll draw 2-2 with Olympiacos. I think they're a lot more dangerous. To me, they feel more dangerous this season than they were last season. They have a good midfield. They can get goals. They're not afraid to shoot outside the box. There's something about Sokratis playing for them that makes me very uncomfortable. As that ex-player comes, you know how those stories go sometimes, Tom.
He's scoring. There's no doubt in my mind. He's scoring.
He's going to score a header. So, 2-2 for that one. And then the North London derby. Oh, God. I'm going to go for a 1-1.
Yeah. I said the other day, I think I was very optimistic for. Now I need to, because having you on here has enlightened me to the different pronunciation of the correct pronunciation of, is it Olympiakos? Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. So
it's saying it like a Greek, it's Olympiakos.
Right. So I'm going to have to work on that.
A lot of people say Olympiakos, don't they?
Yes, that's what I do say, incorrectly, clearly. Yeah, but when we play Olympiakos, which that's not bad.
I like it.
I've said that I thought we might really go for it and come out, try to win it, would get as many away goals as possible. And I said 3-0 very optimistically. It's not going to be easy, and that's pure optimism. And I have blind faith in my optimism only, and that's the only thing I have blind faith in. And then, as I say, I'm an optimist, so I will steal a win against Spurs, maybe 2-1, 3-2. It's going to be close. It's going to be goals. It's going to be interesting. Sophie, it's been an absolute pleasure. We don't agree, which is what football is all about, ultimately, is differing opinions. But I think we've had an enjoyable debate, and one that I know the listeners have enjoyed. And 99% of them have been fantastic in the chat as well.
Well, that's good. And listen, I respect your opinion, and you've given me a lot of food for thought, which is
likewise
one of the beautiful things about coming into a debate and a discussion, is being open-minded to hear things that maybe you may not agree with, and you can go away thinking about those things. So that's definitely happened on this discussion tonight. So I appreciate that.
100%. And as I said at the start of the show, you can check out Sophie's stuff in the link in the description to the Highbury Squad, along with, of course, Kevin Campbell and Amanda, Princess Guna. I'm sure she's watching on playback. So hello, Amanda. We survived. We didn't kill each other. We did it. So you can drop a like on the video for that, I'm sure, as can you guys in the chat box too. I'll be back tomorrow at 5 o'clock with Drew for the normal Let's Talk Arsenal show on Tuesday at 5 p.m. But other than that, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to Sophie and you guys in the chat box, as course, and we'll see you again very, very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal.